All right, episode 8. How's it going? This is Dylan Dube, everybody.
Hello there.
All right, so you work at the Orpheum Theater, right? And so tell me a little bit about your position there.
So my position is a production coordinator. And by definition, what I do is I take road shows and I implement them into our building. And my areas of expertise are audio and video. So I will generally work with the tour engineers and advance their needs of what they need from us to get their show into the building. That's the short version of everything that I do. The
short version, that sounds like a lot. Sounds pretty stressful. Like what kind of shows do you do? Like what's the crazy show?
We do everything at the Orpheum. We do Broadway, comedy, rock shows.
What's the biggest Broadway show you've had?
We did Dirty Dancing in 2017, and that one had 11 semis.
11 semis?
Yeah.
Do you generally like measure them off of how many trucks are on load in? Or
for Broadway, it's generally how you know how big the show is. Like, for instance, we just did Christmas Carol. We did the loadout for Christmas Carol, and that show had 6 trucks. So for the Orpheum, that's probably a larger show. For most other theaters, that's like a medium-sized show.
All right. Well, so you said 11 trucks was a lot for the Orpheum?
Oh, yeah. 11 trucks would be a lot for most theaters.
Yeah, because I've been in there. I can't imagine fitting 11 trucks for the stuff in there. That sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot. So what happens is you end up backloading. After about 8 trucks worth of stuff, we'll unload what's on the semis, take what's in the cases that we need, and backload all of the cases back onto the trucks.
So, is there somebody running that, or is that you organizing that?
Typically, I only do anything to do with the audio side of the world. So
you just hook up with the audio guys right away?
Yeah, I link up with the audio guys. They get themselves in the building, show me what they have, and it's up to me to know their gear as well as my building, so that I know how to implement their stuff into my stuff. So, for instance, most of the Broadway tours run with Digico consoles, and we use at the Orpheum, we're a Yamaha house, so we have all Rivage and that sort of thing. But I also have to know how Digico works and how to use those consoles in order to make that fit into my building and to use our infrastructure, so we don't have to pull too many snakes and so on and so forth. Some shows don't care what you have and they just pull everything anyways, because they've been burned too many times on house gear. But we typically don't have that problem at the Orpheum as far as our house gear not working, because it's all really new. So
yeah, do you have any nightmares trying to integrate old equipment into the new system?
Yeah, so there's a show that tours around the world, actually. And you see the billboards on the 10 and everything. Shenyun.
Oh, yeah, Shenyun.
Yeah, so when they are completely analog. So they tour with a Midas Verona 480 and an Allen and Heath GL 3200. They use both desks. One is strictly for inputs. They use the other one strictly for outputs. And they pull these giant copper snakes like we used to do back in the early 90s. And they still do it the old school way for whatever reason.
Because they just haven't trained anybody, or what?
Well, no, most of their engineers are, I mean, they're super seasoned, but they're so set in their ways. They just tore this super heavy analog stuff, and like the world has moved on. I mean, when you think about it, like 1990 was 30 years ago.
Yeah, right.
The world's moved on from analog. It doesn't exist anymore. Really,
everything runs on Ethernet now.
In the live sound world, it's very rare. I mean, okay, so Green Day took out a Neve console this year that they had to have a custom case built for it, and then they ended up using the Neve Dante Pre's anyhow. Even though they had a Neve 5088 console, I think it was a 5088 with them.
So what are they, just nerds?
Well, no, I mean,
doing it for fun?
Don't get me wrong. That desk still sounds amazing, and as much as the old school activists are correct, you just can't recreate that sound. There's some people that, in fact, just don't want to recreate that sound.
But I mean, like a live show, it's like there's so much going on in that venue. How much like precision are you really going to get out of a specific board?
Apparently, it made a really big difference. I have a friend that works for so Green Day toured with D&B line array system.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, Nick Maggieri, that works for D&B, actually was the one who helped deploy the system in Texas and so on and so forth. And he said that the Neve console made an enormous difference in the dynamic range for the show.
I wonder if there's a way to emulate that.
I have no idea. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start to emulate something like that. But I mean, Yamaha has done a wonderful job with emulating all of Neve's products. And before Rupert passed away this past year, Rupert was still signing off on all of the emulations. So like
from Yamaha specifically?
Yeah, specifically. So like all of their Portico stuff that's in their desks, all of their, the 2B master bus compressor, their 5045 signal enhancer, all that stuff got signed off on by Rupert Neve. So that's legit, like real. This is as close to the piece of analog gear that you're ever going to get. But I don't know how you'd emulate an entire desk. I mean, I know Waves has tried with the SSL 4000s, where you can get like the SSL channel, and then they have the SSL master bus plug-in, and if you put them together, it's pretty close. But I don't know is that you'd ever get really like bang on to a whole desk.
When is the standard going to change to digital? I mean, completely. People are still trying to emulate the analog, but when is it just going to be like, well, digital is what we got?
Well, in the touring world for live audio, anyways, it's been digital for so long now. I mean,
let's just wait at that point. It's so much easier.
I mean, you used to tour with, 4 trucks of PA and a whole truck of front of house, and
it's like half that.
It's not even close to that now. I mean, unless you're doing like a national tour, I mean, you're showing up in like a truck of audio.
Yeah.
Instead of 4. I mean, if you're on an arena tour, you might still have 4, but it's 4 instead of 8.
That's,
and a lot of that has to do with, with line arrays advancements and the whole line source thing is still relatively a new concept. I mean, that didn't really come into play until the early 2000s. Or until, it was before that, but people really didn't start trusting it until then. Because they used to, tour these giant point source arrays, and you go to an AC/DC concert and you'd see 86, JF 650s hanging on either side of the stage, and they'd have 40 SB1000 subwoofers on either side of the stage, and it was stereo left, right, and it was just loud, and those things just threw frequencies in every direction. And it's not like that now. It's
a little more scientific.
It's super. It is. It's very much. It's kind of like surgery now. Like we can pinpoint seats within an arena that we want sound to be 6 dB down from where it was. You know,
the bass is too heavy right there.
Yeah,
whatever.
the row
Yeah.
in front. I mean, we can really nowadays we can really be pretty precise. And at the Orpheum, we do just that. I have settings to turn off the balcony, and I have settings to turn on, you know, to do all of that sort of stuff. My subwoofers are scalable depending what kind of event we have. Like, none of that stuff was even thought about back in the early 90s.
Well, stuff's still changing too. There's still like crazy stuff coming out. I mean, have you heard of the whole ambisonic audio movement?
No.
Like where Apple is really taking a head charge in it. All the Apple Music, they're coming out with spatialized audio. So if you have earbuds in, they can literally like emulate a room around you.
Yeah.
Make it sound like you're in the same room as the band. And it's like, if you switch the setting on and off, you can tell a huge difference. Like, you think like, oh yeah, I put in earbuds. Like, yeah, okay, you hear the music, you hear the band, whatever. But like when you turn on spatialization, it's like it almost sounds like it's right in front of you. Like the band is in the same room as you, and it trips you out. Like, it's so strange.
Dolby does that with their
The Atmos.
The Atmos. So they call it like their Aural engine or something like that.
Immersive
engine.
It's called.
But when I designed the cinema system for the Orpheum, I had the design in 7.1, and that was basically how I did it. It was just basically my headphones.
Yeah, they just do it by objects now.
Everything's a sound object, and
the computer algorithm completely takes over. You just move a dot on the screen and say like, oh, I want it to come from here, and the computer just writes it to come from there. It's pretty cool.
The emerging of in-ears on stage, there's actually a device called the Clang. And that has actually helped a lot of national touring artists use that. And basically, in their in-ears, when they're on stage, they can actually place each sound object, which is basically every microphone input. You can group them together. So, like, for instance, if you have like 10 mics on the drums, you can group those together and, you know, say drums, and you can put those behind you, and you can put your if you do, you know, like if you did a DI on your bass where you did like the dry signal and you had that come out of the amp, you'd have 2 channels there. You could group those, put those on your left. You could do the same thing for your guitar and your right. So then you could, you know, with this Clang device, I think that with the conductor you can do up like it's like 146 different inputs.
Oh, wow.
And you can go 360 all the way around your head.
Oh, that's cool.
And once
like a 3D headphone mix, pretty much.
Right. And then when you lock in the position, when you move your body, it follows where you go.
Oh, geez, that's cool.
So
that's crazy.
I know that one of my buddies used to do sound for Justin Bieber. And I know that he said that he used to use it for Bieber because he hated the in-ears. He always used to take them out. So that way he could get the live feeling.
Right.
But with the Clang, it just felt so natural that you kind of forget that you have the in-ears in because it sounds like you don't have in-ears in, but you can actually hear yourself.
Yeah, I want to try those now.
There's actually, so if you download the Clang app, you can actually try in demo mode with your headphones, and it will actually, you can do the whole demo. It's actually really, really cool.
So how does it get like the spatialization then if you don't have like a certain device for that?
Well, so
how does it know if you're turning your head?
Well, so that's what I'm saying. So like when you buy, like the demo model is the demo model. It doesn't obviously do that. But when you buy like the conductor box or I can't remember what the other boxes that they have. There's different levels of it. It's not cheap.
No, that sounds expensive.
There's I mean, I say not cheap. You can get, I think the smallest box is like $2,500. And then it goes up from there. But you can, you buy the box and you put your inputs into it and go through. It works. It works natively with Digico desks. I've never actually seen anyone try to use it for anything else, but I know it's possible. I just think it's a little more difficult.
So it's a Digico program?
Digico owns Clang.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yeah. They also own XTA, which makes some console switching devices. And
yeah. I'm wondering where the audio industry is going to go, and as far as VR, it kind of makes me think about like virtual reality and stuff.
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot of tours now that are actually touring in surround sound. Like we actually have one coming to the Orpheum, the Nick Mason experience.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
He was the drummer for Pink Floyd. And that show is actually touring in what they call DMB Soundscape, which is interesting because it's an immersive audio thing, but we already have that at the Orpheum. So that system's already installed. So I'll be curious to see when that show comes around in February, if I have to pull mine out to put theirs in, or if they'll just use mine.
Yeah, just upload their show.
Yeah, you saw it yesterday. It's just a file.
Yeah,
you load it in and it's there.
Yeah, I'm excited for that show though. It's going to be cool to see that.
Yeah, and he's a legend. Pink Floyd is kind of legendary, so
kind of.
He's a hell of a drummer, and then to have what's his guitarist? Dave Gilmore.
Yeah.
To have him around as well.
He's coming for sure.
That's half of Pink Floyd.
Nice.
And I'm super stoked about that. So
yeah, that's going to be dope.
That'll be a fun show.
So you've done a lot in live sound. Like run me through like a summary of like how you got to the Orpheum. I know you think it's going to sound like a lot, but I mean, this kind of stuff
I can hit the high points.
That's what I want. We'll get to the low points later.
Right. Well, there's many of those too. Let me tell you. So, geez, I was a sophomore in high school, and I worked at. We used to have Votech, part of our high school. So that's basically where I flourished in that. And I did multimedia class there, and we used to run a TV station. So I kind of took to audio because most people didn't care to do that in high school. So cool. If I get to go run basketball, it's audio, and, I can put that on a resume at, 17 years old that I was running, sports sound in the truck for a TV station,
right?
That's pretty cool. So I started there, and then I went to college. And like within multimedia class, we did not just audio, but we did, video and video editing and lighting and so on and so forth. So what I really liked when I went into college was lighting. I thought it was really cool. I thought
like theater lighting
and concert lighting and that sort of stuff. And what I really liked about it was how the effect of light can change the whole mood of a scene or a show. And it might kind of sound sick, but I like the idea of that I could mess with people's emotions that way. So I was like, cool, I'm going to do lighting. Well, the first assignment we got, so we used to use people still use it, but we had at school, we had an ETC Ion, this desk. If you ever just look it up, we lost too. And my assignment was I needed to make a figure 8 with a Verilight 2500 spot using 3 cues. And this is supposed to be like the basic assignment. So I sat there for a good 8 hours and couldn't make it do what it needed to do. And that one and we were like 3 days into class, and I was like, cool, dropping lighting, going to be an audio guy now. So then I signed on with audio and really never looked back as far as college went. In college, we got to do some really cool stuff. I went to the New England School of Communications in Bangor, Maine. That's kind of like it's a sub off the University of Maine. So we got treated the same way and all that stuff, but we were the nerds because everybody wore black, and that's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
And during school, I got to do some really cool things because we owned a outdoor pavilion. So what would happen is they would book national artists. And when I say national artists, I mean like, Kenny Chesney played there. Guns N' Roses played there. Godsmack played there. Real big time shows. And what they would do is they would come in and they would, instead of doing their normal tour routine where they'd show up, the same day, load in that morning, do a show, load out that night, they would show up 3 days early. And their road crew would work with our students, and we would get taught by the road crews how this works. What do you do? What is actual stage lingo, not what's in the book.
Right.
You know? So like we would learn from some of these people, like the most memorable one for me, and it turned out to be that I actually got to know this guy later on in life. We had Linkin Park come through.
Oh, nice.
And Ken Pooch actually was front of house engineer, and Tater was monitor engineer for this tour. And they were there for like 3 days. And I got to sit at front of house with Ken and pick his brain. And the amount of information that I learned just from doing that far surpassed anything that I learned in college. Way, way over and above. That guy has forgotten more about sound than I know. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of resource that you just don't get at school. You just don't.
Yeah. I just finished school and I'm already feeling that way working at the Orpheum. I mean, nothing against Crass or anything, but like working on the job experience at the Orpheum, doing all these different kinds of shows, I'm learning so much about live sound. It's crazy. Well, even working on just one specific system, I'm learning so much.
Yeah. And that was the other thing that was really cool is like they bring in their own PAs, their own lighting stuff. So like,
yeah,
you saw a whole completely different way of doing things.
Yeah.
So like
every single time,
every single show would show up and it would be different. And then you just start realizing like, oh, this is really all the same stuff in the end, but there's like 1,000 different ways to get to that point. So that, it was just amazing to me to be able to do that and, make those connections that later on in life, you go to, you go to a concert and you happen to walk by the front of house engineer and you're like, oh, hey, remember me? And you sit down and have a conversation with the guy. It's kind of, obviously they're busy, so they don't really have long conversations, but, but like, just knowing people in the industry, our industry is it might seem large, but it's super small.
Well, the way I think about it is like, how many bands are out there? Like, how many bands do you think you know? And like, divide that by 100, and that's the sound guys out there.
Yeah.
So there's like one sound guy for every 100 bands that exist.
Right.
So it's like the circle is small. Yeah. Really small.
Yeah. To get on a national tour, you have to be pretty good.
Yeah. For sure. But so you went from your college experience, you were just getting a lot of hands-on training.
Yeah,
right?
So we got a lot of hands-on training with the live sound stuff, and then they used to have people come to the school for like interviews with the seniors, basically.
Yeah, sure.
So I interviewed at Clear Brothers, and I interviewed at a company called Rainbow Productions that doesn't even exist anymore, out of Vermont, and I ended up getting hired through Rainbow Productions. And basically, much like Clearwing does here, they would, supply gear for a tour. Here's the road technicians for the tour. See you in 6 months. So I got to do some really cool stuff that way. So like I got to do, some one-off gigs with Snoop Dogg, some one-off gigs with Deadmau5. I got to do a 6-month leg of their America tour with Black Crowes. I did a 3-month leg with Disturbed. So I got to do some really cool stuff. And then I was like, this is fun and all, but I'm kind of thinking the Caribbean would be fun. So I signed on with Carnival Cruise Lines and worked there for 5 years. I ran the Broadway style production shows for 4 of those 5 years. And then my last year, I got into being a floater technician, where they would send me to and fro the ships that had trouble, or that ships that had technicians that were going on vacation that needed coverage. So I would go to those ships and cover for all of that.
Well, like by helicopter?
No, no, not by helicopter. I used to just pull in the electrical cord and pull the ship back to shore. No, they would dock, and then, you know, you basically
swap out there.
Yeah, you swap out in whatever home port it is, and, you know, you sign on and you live on the ship. And, you know, it was the entertainment side of the world in the ship industry is very different than what you hear about from every other thing. Like, I used to work 4 to midnight every day. So, I mean, like, I had a load in every day of a Broadway show at 4. We had sound checks at 6. I had shows at 7 and 9. We'd do our load out, and then we'd go to crew bar. That was kind of how that worked.
So short days, pretty much?
Short days. But what was really nice is, like, you know, you show up in Bermuda and you can get off and go to the beach and come back and shower and do your load in. And, you know, like,
yeah, right.
that's sounded a hell of a lot better than a tour bus, and, you know, a whole bunch of.
How long did you do the cruise ship for?
I did that for 5 years.
5 years.
And honestly, the only reason I left was because I met my wife on the ship, and she was basically over being yelled at guest services. So that's why I got off the ship, and then moved here to Arizona. Of course, I'm from Maine, so, like, how do you get a job in Arizona in audio when you know nobody? I interviewed at a whole bunch of places, eventually landed at Scottsdale Center for the Arts. And Lisa Marie was the technical director at the time. She took a chance on me, and thank God she did.
What'd you do?
So I was the A2. So a gentleman by the name of Rich Williams was our A1. And he did all of the mixing and all that sort of stuff. But basically what I was doing was what I was doing on tour, which was running monitors and running the stage and patching the stage and doing all that sort of stuff. So I felt right at home, because I went from doing the A1 stuff on the ship to back to doing A2 monitor rig stuff, which I was completely okay with. If I'm being perfectly honest, I would much rather do monitors than do anything in front of house.
Well, yeah. Once you learn so much, you want to go back,
right? Like. And then if I have it my way at all, I'd like to be the system tech on the tour, right. Because you set your system, you tune it. Once the front of house engineer is good, you're off to catering, my man. Go catch some food, catch some sleep, come back, take down your PA, load it in the truck, and on to the next city. That's like the gig. Never made it to being the system tech on the tours, but I did some stage patching and some monitor engineer stuff, and yeah, that was basically it. But anyways, I landed at Scottsdale Center for the Arts, worked there for about a year, got to do a bunch of one-offs that came through the building. Leanne Rimes, Winona Judd and the Big Noise, Chick Corea, Preservation Jazz Hall Band.
So do all the big names have like their own sound guy that comes in?
Typically, so that was my first experience of ever being like a quote unquote house guy, and having tours come to us. And that was where I really learned how to interface tours with a building. Yeah. Was at Scottsdale Center. Because I was always on the other side of it, right? I was always coming in with a system and somebody else advanced it. I just knew how to hook my world up. And once my world was hooked up, I didn't care about anybody else's world.
Right.
So being on the house side of things, where I needed to get this guy going and then move on to the next guy to make sure he was set up and interfaced with our building, for assisted listening and, all of the other logistical things that happen in a building that you don't think of when you're on tour.
You've been on both sides though.
Yeah. So that kind of gives me a little bit of a unique perspective of things. Right. So I've seen both sides of the world, and I much prefer being on the house side because tour buses are nowhere where you want to be.
Why is that? What's so bad about tour buses?
Man, I just heard the tour buses and
Just enough stories.
man, I mean, you can't even make that up. Being on the tour bus, like you're always cramped in this area, and
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. Like you get this bunk and you get this little bit of space
Drawer.
That's what I mean? Like that's your spot. And the last place you want to be after, a 10-hour load in or a 6-hour load out is going back to this little bunk, and in 4 hours I got to get up and do another load in. Like it's just
for the next 3 months.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the pay was great, but it was just not where I wanted to be.
Right. Well, I mean, so like, would you recommend that for somebody starting out in the audio? Or would you like steer clear of tour buses?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, if I could do it all again, I probably would do it exactly the same way. Just because my experience drew so much from, okay, I know that this is a great experience and I get to work with all these bands and all these people that are, really talented and really good at what they do. But for me, I was like, man, it's gotta be a better place to tour. And I was like, hey, this Caribbean thing looks pretty good.
Yeah. Did somebody like tip you off to that?
Well, so like
see it.
Like a year previous to that, right? I was still in school because I only worked for the Rainbow Productions for like 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I did that 6 months and then that 3-month spit. So I guess it was 9 months. But I had remembered that when I was a senior, like I was saying, Claire Brothers and all those other companies had come to school to do like senior interviews, if you will. One of the companies was Carnival. I did my interview, and I remember, getting a employee ID number. Of course, it didn't click that all I had to do was call and get my assignment, and I would have been on a ship. So I called and I was like, hi, like I interviewed for a while ago, and I've been waiting for a phone call. So I gave them the employee ID number. And they were like, oh, yeah, we were kind of curious why you never called us.
Like, where have you been?
And so can you be on the Carnival Sensation tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, let's go.
Okay.
So I packed my bags and I called my mom and I was like, I'm leaving tomorrow morning and I'm going to be gone for 6 months. And she was like, okay, call when you're in port, like.
Yeah, all right.
So I did. I left and I never came back. I never went back to Maine after that. I peaced out.
You've never been back?
No, we've been back twice. I went back once when my son was born. And when my mom passed away, I went back for the funeral. But that's it. I've never been. I haven't been back since.
Yeah, I can't imagine a reason to go to Maine. Honestly, but
it's a pretty place if you have money. It's not a place to go to make money.
No,
for sure.
Arizona's a place to go to make money.
Potentially.
Potentially.
There's
a lot of job openings here, that's for sure.
There is.
Especially in sound.
Yeah.
Hell.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic really hurt the whole industry in the entire country.
Of the world.
Just because people found like, I don't need to bust my ass for 15 hours a day doing this hard work in sound. I can be a security guard and make the same amount of money instead of my ass and watch a monitor, like. Yeah. So, I mean, people found other things to get through the pandemic is basically my point. And we came back and now our labor shortage is crazy. And there's just not enough people that know what they're doing to support all of the tours that are out.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like I've been thinking about it, and like I only got to like the school I went to because I know people who went there. But it's like if there's no like avenue into the industry, like there's nobody going into the industry. So it's like a really niche like club you got to
For
like
sure.
find yourself in. It's not like something,
Yeah.
you know, you wake up one day and like, oh, you know, I want to do audio. No, it's like you got to know some people and they kind of like push you into it. Like,
Yeah, and it's not even just knowing some people. It's like even in like your case, like you went to school, you've run a bunch of desks, and you know you did all the whole troubleshooting thing, and you're like, yeah, I'm excited, let's go, I want to do this, and then you get on your first gig, and you're like, hey, dude, go get that box off the truck. You're like, that's not what I came here to do, but you gotta. That's, you know what I mean. Like I can remember my first part of the tour, out with the Black Crows, like I was pushing boxes off the truck. I was patching stage inputs. I was doing all of that dirty stuff, going to get coffee, like doing all of that stuff. And you just kind of have to take it. I mean, it sucks, but you kind of have to take it for a little bit. And then
I was in the Navy. I'm okay with all that shit.
You know what I mean? Like you just
I'm not scared of that shit.
You just got to take it. And then, you know, when you get your shot, you make it so nobody takes it back.
Yeah.
Like
make sure you're prepared
from my point of view. Like when I was on tour, we had some dude got sick, and we had, at the time, they were DigiDesign venues, was what we used on tour. So they had a D show at front of house, and we had a profile on monitors. The monitor engineer got sick. We had a show, and I was like, well, I'm certified on the desk. I know how to do it. Just load the file and, you know, don't change too much. Pretty well set. I mean, we're at show like 15 of the tour. I mean,
yeah. I mean, what else is going to change?
What's changed? So I ended up running monitors that night, and after that, I did it for the next show, and then for the next show, and then.
So what happened to the dude who got sick?
You know what I mean? Like I just never let the guy back on the desk. Is basically what it was. Like,
so what did he do then?
He just got let go and went away.
So you can't get sick?
I mean, he basically, like, you don't let people. I mean, for instance, like I went into work. Was it yesterday? Yesterday, my back was dying, dude. But I was no way I'm letting somebody else go in and do my job, because I've seen that just get slipped. Like, oh, if he can do it, I can pay him less. Let's do that. I'm going to pay this
right.
dude less. You know what I mean? And that's basically what happened when I was on that tour. I mean, I was making like $12 an hour, and this dude that was running monitors was getting like $100 per diem a day plus his $28.50 an hour. Like, well, this is a no-brainer. Yeah. You know, I'll pay this dude the same amount of money, and we'll save a whole bunch of cash, and the tour's cheaper now. You know,
wow.
So
nice.
There is that sort of cutthroatness in the live industry,
entertainment in general.
In general. But I've noticed less of it since the pandemic's happened, because there's less people.
You can't afford to go find someone else.
Yeah, no.
It's more expensive to go find a new employee.
I know engineers that are literally saying no to gigs. So is that way when they go to try to find somebody else and they can't, they have to come back to this dude. He'll say, oh, yeah, I can do it, but my day rate now is $800 instead of $600. So, you know, they drive their price up because supply and demand, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, if the guy calls you a second time, I mean, you might as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I just can't do that. I feel slimy doing that. You know?
I mean, if you're making good money, you're making good money.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't be able to do that either.
I feel slimy about it, but
maybe I'm naive.
Yeah.
Who knows? So tell me, you have any stories that stand out from the cruise ship? I'm sure you've got a couple. That sounds like some interesting times.
Yeah. So, I mean, we did a bunch of stuff on the ships. I really kind of focused on mixing when I was on the ship, because you get assigned a cast, right? And all the shows on the cruise ships run. At the time, they ran on a program called Showman, which has since been replaced by QLab.
Okay.
So everything in the show runs on time code. So my audio desk would send time code out to a Motu device.
Yeah.
And then the Motu would send it to lighting, who would program their Q stack to the time code.
Okay.
And then Pyro would also get the same time code, which would trigger their ready set fires for the pyro stuff that happens on the ship. And then it would also get sent to automation, which would cue their ready set fire. So all of that got queued up off of my time code.
Right.
So I learned a lot about Broadway programming and that sort of stuff, where you need to be able to redo things exactly the same over and over, that sort of stuff. And I mentioned that to mention one of my biggest mistakes in my life. So
mistakes are the good stories are the ones.
Yeah. So we used to use an Alesis 24 ADAT machine to play these. So we had, it was a multi-track player. And then what you had to do, we used to record Larry tracks or laryngitis tracks for our performers, because you're out in the middle of the sea and a performer gets sick. Well, they're still going on, whether they can sing or not. They just need to have a Larry track. So somebody would play, I would play their Larry, and they would just lip sync to Larry.
Okay.
If they were sick.
Sure.
If they physically couldn't do it. Most of the time, they always could do it. We would do that for singers. We would do that for the live band. So we would multi-track the band, and if the bass player didn't show up one day because he was sick,
you could still add it.
I would just play the bass player's track, and because it was on time code, it was the exact same thing every time.
Right.
So, but when you record something, you never wanted to record over the time code. And my first contract, Carnival Sensation, just out of college, never used a DAT machine in college because we were on Pro Tools. Who uses DAT machines when you have Pro Tools?
Right.
So I pushed in this button thinking, oh, well, I don't want to record over time code, so I'm going to mute time code. Well, on the ADAT machine, the mute button is the record arm. So I hit play and we recorded the Larry tracks, and I recorded over time code for this entire show. So
that's a mistake.
So that was a mistake. So I had to call the captain of the ship. Well, and I was like, I know you have a captain safe that has the original copy of the show. I need to relay time code because I was an idiot. So then he calls home office, and it turns into this whole thing.
Oh man.
And I ended up relaying the time code over, so we didn't have to record everybody's tracks again. But
right,
it just turned into one of those fiascos, and that was kind of like my first thing I ever did on the ship, where I was like, "Dude, maybe I'm not cut out for this," Like,
well, at least it was the first thing, right?
But I stuck with it, and that led to some really cool things. I helped, like I said, when I was doing the floater stuff. Carnival does this thing called Carnival Live, where they bring national artists onto the ship. So I was able to do some stuff with that. They do these one of the most memorable things that I did with the Carnival Live stuff is we actually do this cruise called the Tom Joyner Cruise. It's basically a funk and R&B type deal. Unbelievably fun.
Yeah.
A lot of work, but unbelievably fun. And we did Snoop Dogg over on the main deck, and I actually have video of this I can show you.
Oh, nice.
We built a stage over the pool on the Lido deck, and we did Snoop Dogg out there, and I think it was Chris Rock out there. It was really fun, but it was really
nice.
Cool because previous to that, like I was That would have been 2013. I would have done that Time Joiner cruise. Previous to that, 2009, I had worked with Snoop at House of Blues because of Rainbow Productions, House of Blues in Boston. So I'd already kind of I already knew his engineer and kind of stuff. So again, an example of how the small world it was, I kind of brought up that memory of, hey, I worked with you guys in 2009 in Boston at House of Blues. And like, as soon as you mention that, like, there's that familiarity.
He's like, oh yeah, I have seen you before.
You know, like I thought you looked familiar, but and you know, you just kind of get that trust immediately from those road engineers, and you know, it was a super fun gig, and got to do Snoop again, which he's super chill, probably the easiest guy to do sound for on the planet.
Well, yeah, he's probably been through so much shit.
Dude,
he doesn't have patience to deal with it.
All he cares about is that his microphone is clean and that the wedges are up loud. And
does it work? All right.
We're good. We're good. We need babes and bitches. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
right.
You know what I mean? That's basically those are the requirements to do Snoop Dogg. I mean, if I'm being honest. But
and that road engineer gets to do Snoop Dogg every night.
Man, that dude must end up with a contact high every single day of his life.
I mean, your tolerance hits a certain point. I mean, contact high doesn't exist anymore.
It's true. But yeah, we did it. That was probably one of my favorite cruises. Tom Joyner was always a fun one. I did, what else did I do? We did Kid Rock one year out on an island.
On an island?
Yeah. And I wasn't
to take all your gear off the ship.
We loaded it over on a tender boat.
Oh, geez.
And pushed it through the beach sand. You can imagine how fun that was.
Oof.
We built the stage, set a PA, and then the people that came off the ship to see the Kid Rock on Half Moon Cay were literally in the ocean.
Oh, so the stage is facing the water?
Facing the water.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So it was a really cool setup,
yeah,
right?
That's neat.
It took a day to set. I mean, it was awful. And then another day to get rid of it.
Imagine the sand was probably a pain in the ass to work
everywhere.
with.
And then all that gear had to get sent off the ship and back to the shop and cleaned. And
yeah, of course.
Like, it was just a nightmare. But I mean, everybody enjoyed it. And you actually, if you go online and search Google Kid Rock at Half Moon Cay, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, just a nightmare. Logistically on the audio side of things to make that happen. Yeah, just, I mean, maybe that wasn't one of my favorite gigs, but it's definitely one that I remember.
Yeah, that's the ones I want to hear about, man. I want to hear the ones you remember for sure.
And I've done a bunch of stuff like that. I was on the Carnival Spirit. We were taking it to Australia from Honolulu, and we had that particular ship used Electro Voice speakers and processing, and we used NetMax N8000 processor with the analog in-out cards in it, and normally it had been pretty stable. Ship power's 50 hertz to standard European power, but the ship gets its power from its engine, so it generates up and down, right? Well, we were in port, and they had connected shore power in the U.S., 60 hertz, not 50 hertz.
Right.
So it messed with the whole thing.
Yeah.
The power supplies were not built to do that. And I ended up frying like 6 of the 8 cards in this one NetMax. We had 3 of them. And I lost the entire balcony, the entire under balcony in my main lounge.
Oh, man.
I had, and it's not like a left-right setup. So on the ships on that class of ship, it's a ringed setup. So you have a first main ring right in front of the stage. There's a mid ring that normally feeds your upper balcony area. And then there's an under ring, which feeds your whole under balcony. And I lost the mid ring and the under balcony ring. All I had was the main ring. So to try to fill a whole room with 8 speakers for a Broadway show was ridiculous. And all these people paid exorbitant amount of money to be on the trip that went from Honolulu to Sydney, Australia.
Oh yeah.
And my net max goes out. Like I just wanted to curl up in a ball because like
that wasn't even your fault.
No, it's not. It's just out of my control, but I have to deal with it, right? So
yeah.
Like, how do you get
what would be the fix then? Just not hook up to shore power?
Well, I mean, they end up getting power converters put in the amp rooms that can handle the voltage changes.
But after the fact.
Yeah. We used to have.
So do all the ships have those now?
Yeah, everything. Everything is done.
I wonder if you were the final straw.
I mean,
you were the
it
one
seems to
like...
be a trend here.
You're a pioneer, Dylan.
Yeah, I'm a pioneer of,
a pioneer of mistakes.
Here, you don't think we can mess that up? Let me try. I'm pretty good at that. But we ended up getting to Sydney, and I got a package of Netmax cards sent from home office to Sydney that was waiting for me. So I was able to just put the cards in. We got it right back where we were. But
that's good.
It was 9 days before we got there.
So that was that like the very first thing you did was fry those cards, like going out.
No, we had already been at sea for 7 days. So we left San Diego, went San Diego to Honolulu. We did all the Hawaiian Islands, and then we went back to Honolulu for an overnight to get restocked for.
And that's when you fried them?
And that's when I fried them. And we still had Bora Bora, Fiji. There was one other little island before we got to Sydney. And each one of those had like what they call fly-on performers. So in those islands, somebody would come on and do like a special show that night, and you sign off the ship the next day. Here I am with this a quarter of what I have for PA. Like it was awful.
Disappointing.
It was awful. But it's what I had to work with, so we made it work. And yeah, we got a lot of complaints about it, but what could I really do?
Yeah,
they're not going to helicopter drop me in these cards in the middle of the South Pacific. That's not happening.
Jet ski comes out of nowhere and just brings you.
Is that a pirate? No, it's just Dylan's delivery. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Ridiculous. Yeah, no, they don't. No.
You just gotta wait until you get to the next port.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the biggest part about being on the ship is that, like, if something broke, it's not like you could just go to the store and get something, right? Like,
yeah,
my Aviom, for instance, if I, started having trouble with Aviom or something like that, and I needed a part, I had to order the part and pray that it was going to be in home port when I got there, or else it was just going to stay broken.
Yeah, right.
Like there was no way I could fix things. Like I say that, but like small things like XLR and all of the cable stuff, you could totally build that stuff on the ship, and you had all that sort of stuff. But somebody drops a wireless microphone, your capsule breaks. It's broken.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was some sort of things like that where we would have spares, but
did you ever just like at a port go to a store and try to find equipment?
Oh yeah, I could probably tell you where you can get all of like TRS and XLR and a good deal on DVDs, like in the Bahamas, like for sure.
So you hit port and you're like, okay, I need to find a store.
Yeah, man.
You get some equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. The best, that's actually, to be perfectly honest, if I had to get to choose, I would much rather be in Mexico and have to go try to find something than in the Bahamas, because in the Bahamas, good luck. But at least in Mexico, you had a chance.
Yeah.
The Bahamas, there's no way you could find things.
There's just not a store for that kind of stuff.
No, man.
It's like all touristy, like, bars and restaurants kind of thing.
Like, I don't need my hair braided. Does it look like I need my hair braided? Like, no, not what I need. I need to find a Focusrite. Where do I find a Focusrite?
And they don't know what that is.
They have no idea. But at least in Mexico, you could get off and, they have an idea and you could go and you could actually find things that you were looking for.
Yeah.
One of the things I used to have to find a lot are the USB 2.0 cables.
Oh, yeah. The square ones.
Right. So the PM5D, which is what we had at front of house at most of the ships, in order to be able to use your computer with the 5D, you had to have a 2.0 cable. But there's a reason why nobody uses those anymore is because they were super finicky and they used to break all the time. So I used to have to go try to find those damn cables all the time because I used to make backups of our show file on my computer.
Yeah.
Because those things used to use, I can't even remember the type of cards, but the big flash disc cards that the cameras used to use.
SD cards.
Yeah, they're bigger than that, though. Like ScanDisk. I don't know. I have the thing in my toolbox. I could show you it. But the memory for the desk is on these big SD cards. 32 megabyte.
Ooh.
Yeah. You could go all the way up to a gig. It was a big deal in like 2000.
You can't get less than a gig now.
So you would go and you could make it was like the internal memory for the desk. It would be on this card. But I used to also save on my computer the show files. So it's that way, because we wrote a lot of automation with them, right? So because with Showman and all the time code, I used to program all my mute cues. So when performers would come on and off stage, it would be on or off. Scene changes, all that sort of stuff. Like I had one show where I had like 300 scenes. So like all of that was programmed. It would just change. And then I could focus. Once I had it all programmed, I could focus on actually making the mix right.
Yeah. And that's for like theater specifically.
So,
was that a musical or something?
Most of the Carnival stuff was musical-esque.
Okay.
There was not really a whole lot of speaking parts.
It was like a score every now and then.
Yeah. So, especially like the fast shows, like we had a show called Destination Unknown, which was a magic show. But it used to just one thing right after another, and you'd be hitting the scene change button all the time, and this guy comes on, and then this, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you have to. So it was just easier just to automate everything, run it through Showman, and then turned into QLab.
Yeah,
and write your cues and let the MIDI do all of that stuff, and you could focus on actually how it sounded. But because it was so much programming, I used to make double copies. I used to save it on the file and in my computer.
Yeah, you don't want to do that again.
You spend 3 weeks with cache change programming all this stuff. Like, you don't get 3 weeks in between.
No.
If something goes haywire.
It's like all of a sudden you're doing it manually.
Then now your show sucks again. So good luck, But
so was that a majority of the stuff you did on the ship then? Just like musicals and theater stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
shows?
All of that sort of stuff. And then, like I said, we got into the Carnival Live stuff. But then we used to do maintenance a lot. We used to pick a week a month. So every department would pick a week a month. And we'd pick a port on whatever week that was the most crappy to go out in. And all of us would stay behind and do lighting maintenance or laser pyro maintenance or audio maintenance or stage or automation, whatever it was.
Okay.
So Carnival makes you take the Verilight, because at the time, I don't know if they still make you take it, but at the time, everybody had to take a Verilight class, because we had to be able to take apart the moving lights, replace the parts, clean them, put them back together, because, again, you're in the middle of the ocean. There's nobody to do that. Same deal with the pyro stuff. We used to have to take that apart and clean it, put it back together. all the audio stuff, pull all the amps, blow all that stuff out, put all that stuff back together. You know, automation, we'd always check e-stop before every show and grease all the chains and check all the hydraulic pumps. And
right.
So like everybody had to know how to do everything. And we would just do that all the time. Once a week, we'd pick an area and just do that. So that was great exposure because I don't know if you've ever been on the cruise ships, but unlike on tour, cruise ships have like an unlimited budget. So
that's cool.
So like the automation on the cruise ships is exactly what you'd find in Las Vegas. It's all, you know, Tate, FTSI, top of the line automation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, things that you see like Cirque du Soleil using on Ka and, you know, flying people in the air. And so it's the same program. So that kind of got you exposed to other bigger things. So
right.
Basically everybody who works for Carnival as an automation technician eventually ends up at Cirque.
Oh, I see.
It's kind of like a training thing. Hey, you've learned how to do this here. Hey, we've got this show in Las Vegas.
How's Vegas sound?
You know, like.
So now you've worked on a cruise ship.
Yeah, I know. Because I can think of 4 of those right off the top of my head.
Nice.
And, you know, they're, you know, still there doing that. Thank God, because after the pandemic, we didn't really know if Cirque was ever going to come back. But they're there now. And, you know, well, I think almost every show is back for Cirque. I think they just actually opened a new one with Disney.
Disney Cirque?
Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool.
Wonder if it's better or worse.
Everything that Cirque does is great. No, really. I mean,
yeah, I think I've seen one of their shows. I think I saw the Beatles one.
Love.
Yeah, I saw that one in Vegas. That was crazy.
My friend Sarah is actually on the stage for that. She's a stage manager for Love. Former Carnival stage manager.
Huh.
It's weird when you start like drawing like
that's a hell of a production though.
Yeah, I mean,
it's huge.
You know, I got another friend who does automation on One, which is the Michael Jackson one. I have another friend who's automation on O, which is the water one. And
what was the one? Was it Ka? Where they had like arrows and
yes.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. I saw that one like
that
last
one's
Thanksgiving.
Crazy.
That one's nuts too because they have the whole platform.
That
moves. The platform is on a robotic arm. It spins and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
Can't imagine.
I couldn't even
trying to rehearse that. You have to move that platform every rehearsal.
We have to, you know, you have to rehearse for that, but it's not even just about rehearsing that. About for the performers, like the automation technician's got to rehearse that. The stage manager's got to rehearse that.
Oh yeah.
Like somebody misses a call on one of those things, man. Like it's curtains.
You can tell.
You know, like
it's not something you can just brush under the rug. You can tell something gets messed up.
Yeah, I mean, somebody dies. That's how. You know.
Well, that'd be worst case scenario, but yeah.
I mean, it's happened, but it's happened before on that show.
Well, and it takes less than that to stop a show. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to take somebody dying to stop the show.
Yeah, I mean. And that show is just too easy to do. But
oh yeah, I mean there's people jumping like 30 feet in the air, like off of a moving platform.
It's just nuts.
Like wow, whoa! How do you practice this without just getting paralyzed? Like
airbags? Like
I guess
I don't know. Like just I don't know.
I've never been into acrobatics like that.
I always admire people that can do things that I can't, and that is definitely one of those areas where I am not in that realm.
I tried to get into parkour for a little bit. I quickly learned it was not for me.
Yeah.
I'm just too big.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I mean, right now I'm like 230 pounds. I can't be jumping like picnic benches and stuff.
Right. It's just
break my own legs.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So did they do anything crazy like that on the cruise? Any acrobatic shit? Or is it just...
Yeah, we had this one show called Dancing in the Streets where we used to have acrobats come on.
Yeah.
And that show was actually really fun. That was on the Carnival Dream.
Acrobatics on a ship. I bet that made him
Yeah,
nervous.
it was really cool. That ship was really fun. We used to have breakdancers and acrobats, and
You think the waves ever messed him up?
I mean, you would think that that would be the case, and only if it was really
Choppy.
like a big. Well, you know, you're in the Navy. If it's those ships are so big.
You think I was on a ship though? I was never on a ship.
No.
No.
Those ships are so big.
I was on an air base. I was working with airplanes, not ships.
Yeah. They're just so big that, like, if you don't have 10-foot swells,
Yeah, you're not
that
gonna
ship's
tell.
not moving.
You're not going to tell.
I mean, this ship's 1,000 feet long, 16 stories tall.
How many people do you think it can fit? Like max capacity, what was it?
It depends on the class of the ship. I was on ones that could do 2,300s, and I was on ones that could do 4,000.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that the aircraft carriers, the new class of aircraft carriers for the Navy are like around 5,000-6,000, like at max capacity. They never fill them that much. It's for, like, you know, if they're bringing troops over somewhere overseas, they'll fill it up. But like, it's still crazy to me. Like, I can't imagine like having thousands of people on one boat. Like, that's just nuts to even try to imagine.
It's just like a little floating city. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's absolutely crazy. And that was part of the thing, though, that I enjoyed about being on the ship was, yeah, I got to I was in charge of these Broadway shows, and I got to program all that sort of stuff. You know how many other venues there are on a ship? I mean, I had a casino bar, I had a back lounge, I had a comedy club, I had a piano bar, I had the nightclub, I had, you know, the jazz inputs at Red Frog Cantina. I had, you know what I mean? Like, I had all of this stuff in addition to this stuff.
Were they playing simultaneously?
Always. So
was it just automated, or you had people that run the board?
No, what I used to do is, like, in between shows. So, like, if I had a show at 7 that went till 8, and at 8 o'clock, when that show got done, before the audience would leave, I would run out of the theater with my iPad, and I would connect to the Wi-Fi on each of the desks. So we used to use the compact SIs on like those bars, and I would walk into the room and connect to the iPad via Wi-Fi, and I would be able to control their sound without messing them up because they were playing the people. And nobody did sound check. We've trusted the musicians to plug into the right holes, which sometimes isn't always a thing.
Yeah.
So, like, I used to color code things, and it was like really, like, think like if a monkey could do it. Like, not saying they were stupid, but I was never there to help them set up. So
yeah, it
needed to. I helped them once, and that was it. So they would load their scene and pray.
Right.
You know, like, but in between shows, I would run to all the other venues and make sure things were going okay. Then run back to the main lounge, mix another show, and then do a loadout. And before I'd go to crew bar for the end of the night, I'd go and double check on everything again.
Right.
But for the most part,
that sounds nuts.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot.
So you were the only audio guy.
I was the only audio guy.
You never had helpers.
They cut the back lounge position before I started.
Oh, so there was two?
So there used to be 2, and now on the bigger ships like the Mardi Gras, there's actually 4.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, nice for those guys. It was a pain in my ass.
You're gone now, so it doesn't matter to you.
Yeah, I'm actually at the point now where I've spent more time away from the ship than I was on the ship.
Yeah.
So a lot's changed since I was there. But not a whole bunch.
Yeah. It's still the same beast.
It's really kind of funny because, like, you could go into I use the Carnival Glory as like a thing, right? So Carnival Glory, I was there when we put in the 5D, and we took out the 4K and we put the 5D in. And then I was there when we took the 5D out and put the CL3 in. And the CL3 is still there. So, like, for instance, if we went to cruise on the CL3, the system is as I left it when I left in 2014.
So they don't change much.
No, I mean,
if it works, it works.
If it works, it works. They don't get into the programming, none of that stuff. But to be honest, I actually found my love for system design and programming while I was on the ship. Because of doing those installs, I got to work with a bunch of different, DSPs. So I got to work with Symmetrics and BSS and QSys and all of those other DSPs. And I was like, hey, this is pretty cool install stuff. And then found out you can do that on the side and make a little extra money with programming. And so I still do some of that a little bit. Even now today, when I still work like at the Orpheum, if I'm not here, I work a little bit with Prescott Pro Sound up in Prescott, and sometimes they do install stuff, and I'll design whole system, and I'll just send a file, and they send a check, and it works out wonderfully.
Oh, that's nice.
So, but yeah, I really enjoy doing system design and stuff like that. So
yeah, it sounds interesting. I'm going to school at Crass. Like, I've looked at the studios, and like, how does one get into the position where you're designing a studio, like an actual recording studio? Because if you look at pictures of recording studios, all of them look so crazily different. Like, this one has, all these wooden panels going horizontally. This one has a bunch of blocks that are just seems like they're randomly placed all over. And like, some of them have all foam padding. It's like, where do you start as far as designing those?
Yeah.
You probably have to have years in the audio industry first off.
Right.
But then like, how do you even get into that?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It seems interesting. I would love to design my own recording space at some point, but I feel like I'm going to have to fund that myself entirely.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to try to think that I was going to have a room in my house dedicated to my audio stuff.
That's hard.
And then kids happened, and I don't have any space anymore, even in my own room. So I generally nowadays, though, like, I do my audio stuff at the Orpheum. I do all my training at the Orpheum, or if I get lucky enough, if there's in-person trainings, I try to go to as many of those as I can, even if we don't have the gear at the Orpheum, because in my position, it's so important for me to understand all of it, because we have so many different shows that come in.
You don't know what gear is going to show up.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it. We've done, this welcome to this Mexican mariachi show, and then tomorrow's a comedian, and then we're loading in Dio. You know what I mean? Like, what? Oh, and then we're going to follow that with Daniel Tiger's sing along, like,
and then
what?
And then take all of it out for a Broadway show.
Right, And then we're going to do a kid show at 130 dB, like,
oh God.
Like, I still don't understand what that guy was thinking, but
he wasn't thinking. He was just doing what he's been told. He was taught how to run a soundboard at 130 decibels, so that's what he was doing.
Yeah,
his uncle taught him how to run the soundboard.
Right,
okay?
Right. Louder is up.
Red is okay.
I'm colorblind. It's fine.
Gray is fine. Don't worry about the gray light.
Grays are fine. Yeah. It's one of those things. I don't know. But I try to do every in-person training that I can get my hands on. You never stop learning, and that's the thing about audio, is it's an ever evolving technology.
Yeah.
Principles stay the same, right? We know the speed of sound, air absorption is what it is. Like, all of that stays the same, but like the gear changed so much from copper snakes to fiber, like, so
laser beams.
Like, who knew that during, in the early 2000s that I was going to have to, take Cisco classes to learn how to network in order to be able to do my audio job, like,
right. Yeah, I'm going through the Dante certifications right now. There's a whole bunch of networking information. It's like, damn, all that stuff is so new to me. But it's like, this is what the audio industry is now. It's all networking. Like, if you can't network, like you're not going to get sound out of those speakers.
Right.
Like, you got to know how to use that network.
And it's super beneficial as far as, like, for instance, yesterday we were trying to hunt down signal path, and before I would have had to take a Q box and an XLR cable and go to every single analog point at which the signal could be.
We talked about that though. In that scenario though,
in the scenario we had yesterday,
if we walked over there with a box, we would have seen the cables we were missing.
Right. But I mean, in a larger system, to be able to just stay at front of house, send
right, and just select a different window.
Oh, look, it's transmitting, it's receiving here. Done.
Yeah, the program tells you where all the signals are.
Yeah, you don't have to run around the entire building with a Q box and pray that you find where the bad cable is, or in our case, the missing cable.
Oh yeah, I was an electrician. I know what that's like.
Man, it's
toning out lines, trying to find why this outlet doesn't work.
I mean, I have a Fox and Hound in my toolbox that I don't think I've used now in probably 3 years.
Because of Dante.
Like, I just don't use it. I used to have to do that all the time because we'd, be running these big W4 56 channel snakes. And if you didn't get signal on one, you'd be like, okay, well, which pin is it? Like
single pin is broken.
You have to go tone out a 56 channel snake. Like, no, I don't do that anymore. I personally own 2 SG300s and a Cat 5 cable. So if we show up to a gig and I have to run a snake, I'm running one cable. I'm not running a 56 channel snake. It's not happening. That's just the way that I roll now. I have no need to break my back and pull hundreds of pounds of copper from the stage to the front of house.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone is still doing that,
there's a lot of people that just don't trust it because they don't want to learn it.
That's weird to me. Like, if it's being used so widely, then like, how many problems are there really, like, that you can't fix, honestly? So like, once you start using Dante, if you run into a problem, you could just YouTube it and like teach yourself something, learn how to fix it, and then your system is still easier regardless of how long it took you to fix that problem. Like, everything is a learning experience.
Of course.
Damn, I'd rather know Dante than pulling out
and I mean
snakes.
There's other formats too, like MADI and AES and all of that other stuff, but man, Dante to me just seems like so smart. I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to use it. Just for me, like, it's okay. You take your in point, your out point, you patch it together, and as long as your sample rates connect, you're good.
Yeah. They made it easy for
that's about it. I mean, it's not rocket science.
Yeah, they made it easy on purpose.
I mean, to take anything in and anything out and be able to route them anywhere in one space,
it makes sense.
It's just so much more valuable than.
Well, I mean, they've been doing it with the internet for how long?
Yeah, I mean, it's
about time audio caught up.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to carry a patch bay on? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to mess with TT cables on a tour. Like, are you kidding? Like, no, I don't want any part of a patch bay. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what the patch colors meant anymore. I mean, I know that like red in a studio is like don't touch it, but
they didn't teach us any of that in school. Probably because patch bays are going out.
Yeah, I mean, like, exactly. It's be like going to school right now and being like, okay, well, we need to learn reel to reel. Like, okay, unless you're going to be in a studio that is recording on reel to reel on 8 tracks, like, Pro Tools is just as good, if not better.
They did teach us 2-inch tape.
Yeah. Still?
Yeah, like, they taught us that probably just for like historical reasons. Just saying,
Yeah.
like, here's what we've come from,
Yeah.
and here's where we are now. But
when I was in school, they were like, so this is a tape machine. And okay, so next class we're going to start Pro Tools. And I mean, that was about the extent of it.
yeah, it's. I mean, they dumped us into Pro Tools pretty early, but the tape machine was kind of like I don't know. It was kind of like, here's how tape sounds. Here's how it works. Like, we're exposing you to this just in case you go to a studio and they have you wind a tape machine. You're not just a deer in headlights. You can actually pick up the tape and walk over to the tape machine and put it on, you know. But I think it was more for like, just in case the studio does something weird, our interns are going to know what to do.
Right.
But I don't think it's actually like a super useful skill anymore. You know, it's not going to make you a whole bunch of money knowing how to wind a tape.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess David Grohl still records a tape along with some other bands, but I know David Grohl does for sure.
I've seen some videos of other people that do it, but
I don't know. Some people like the old sound, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to the same thing with the desk. Like,
but then like
there's great emulators now.
Yeah, even in school, like we literally put a tape, like we did this for an experiment. One of our, it wasn't even part of the curriculum. Our instructor was just like, let's see how this is. And we put the tape like straight out of the speakers. And then we had a Pro Tools track. It was like the same thing, but like, you know, we had the emulation for it. So we like recorded something onto tape, and then we used a plugin on a different track, and we like compared them side by side. Like, you can't tell the difference. Like, one of them sounds like tape saturation, the other one sounds like tape saturation. Like, what? They're the same thing. So it's like, why the hell would you record on tape? It's just going to cost you this X amount of money to do it.
Exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah, you could just like click a free plugin and have it sound pretty damn close. It might not be perfect, but you know, your consumers aren't really listening for that. So
right, yeah. I mean, there's nerds out there that'll be like, you know,
they have to do it for the art. It's for the craft, man.
Yeah, you know, they're listening to it on their hi-fi system from 1978.
I'll know it's fake. Okay,
it's God, it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
just keep going with the times. Keep rolling with the digital because it's not slowing down.
No, I mean, it's not. And I mean, you'll see like, you know, some national tours that will have, you know, like an SD7 with Pro Tools and all that sort of stuff. And then you look in their racks and they've still got these analog Neve compressors and so on and so forth. And it's just like, why are you carrying all of that stuff? Like, I know
extra.
I mean, I get it, but at the same time,
it's a concert.
Like,
everyone's drinking beer.
Right,
everyone's just there to have a good time. Like, I don't think they're picking apart the sound of it.
I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, I understand, you know, you got to get a good signal and all that sort of stuff. So like, I understand using like a DPA head, you know, handheld and, you know, a nice, you know, maybe you put it through an Avalon preamp at most.
Yeah.
But I mean, Digico's 32-bit preamps sound pretty good. The Yamaha Neve preamps, they're Portico hybrid preamps. They sound pretty good. You know, like,
yeah,
why do I need to spend $2,000 on an Avalon preamp? I mean, is it really sonically that much better? I have not really heard that much.
Maybe in the studio.
I mean, if you put a scope on it, it probably is, but is it going to sound any different at the Staples Center?
Yeah, coming out of the speakers.
No, it's not.
Coming out of how many speakers? Like 40 speakers at a time, and around how many hundreds of people? Like,
yeah, I mean,
there's not going to be much to compare it to. But I don't know. Some people like their art.
Yeah,
they think it sounds different.
For me, I take the Scotty Baldwin approach, and I'll mix on whatever's put in front of me and make it work without any outboard gear, and we're done. I mean, for instance, he used to mix Prince, who was like the most picky artist ever. He used to mix Prince on a CL5 and regular 32 channel Rios. That's what he mixed Prince on. He didn't carry any outboard gear. He didn't do any of that. He just used the gear that was in the desk, and Prince was happy. Like,
Yeah, I feel like that.
You know,
that's
like,
a pretty telling story. You know, knowing that you can pretty much do anything you want.
I mean, that guy amazes me. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Scotty over the last few years, and he is by far one of my favorite engineers to just listen to because he is an encyclopedia of knowledge.
Over the last few years, is he around here then?
No, he's not around here. He's still in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
But he, I talk to him every once in a while via phone, and I'll message him every once in a while on like Facebook or so on and so forth. But especially if I have a problem, like if I have a question about anything to do with a Yamaha desk or a Nexo PA system, he is the guy to go to. I would rather call Scotty before I call the manufacturer. So like all the Rivage stuff, all the CL5 stuff, all of that stuff. If I have questions, I'll call Scotty first, and if I can't get a hold of Scotty, then I'll call Chip, which is the rep that I know at Yamaha.
Okay.
That's kind of like my pecking order.
Yeah.
Like if I have problems, these are my guys because they know everything about it. Like,
yeah,
Chip is his job literally is to teach about the desks. That's his job at Yamaha. So like he does this stuff on a daily.
Well,
and there's some deeper parts of the desks and some deeper parts of the programs that like I don't get into every day. So I'm like, I know you can do this, but not real sure where that button is. Let me call and find out where the button is.
Right.
Like
well, I'll probably end up meeting that guy someday.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't come into town too terribly much. You have to buy a desk in order for Chip to come out, or you go to NAMM and do the Yamaha classes.
Well, I'll be at NAMM at some point. I'm sure.
This year it's June 4th, 5th, and 6th.
June 4th, 5th, and 6th.
In Anaheim.
Okay. So, well, that's a while away. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I might have money by then. We'll see.
Yeah, I want to go at least one of the days. I like to walk around and look at the new gear, and then it's another place to kind of get yourself known to the reps of the different companies.
Yeah, I got to make myself a t-shirt, Things Beyond Sound t-shirt.
Things Beyond Sound.
So people can look up my podcast while I'm there,
Yeah, for sure.
If this podcast is about audio, I have to get to NAMM.
Yeah, for sure.
I have to be there.
Right. It's kind of, it's a thing.
It's definitely a thing.
Yeah, man. That's a little bit all over the map, but
that's all right.
About me.
Yeah, that's what this show is, man. It's all over the place. Just trying to get stories. I think we got a bunch though. Got some good stuff. But it was good having you on, man. It was good talking with you.
Yeah.
But we'll do some more work at the Orpheum, and I'm sure viewers will hear all about it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, until next time, man.
Thanks.